Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to lesson 5 of the Node.js REST API course. Hope you're having a fantastic start to your day so far. Now, in today's video, we are going to go over a couple of different things. The first of which is to figure out how to deploy to Heroku, which is a cloud service that offers a free tier for us to kind of put our server onto the cloud so that we can access it from a website or our mobile applications. All right, so once we figure out how to do that, we're going to install a MySQL instance so that we can save some data into the cloud as well inside of a database. Now, this is also a free add-on, so we're going to look at how to add that in using the Heroku command line tools. And quickly here, before I go into any of the code, I would like to show you an example of a website that I have launched onto the Heroku cloud service. And if you go to this particular URL, I have a box set up to serve some data for my subdomain of API letsbuildthat.app.com. And I actually pay for this service so that you guys can have a easier way to test out some JSON code. So this is what I have on Heroku. Now, by the end of today's lesson, we are going to have a free tier Heroku box and some URL that kind of looks like this. And this basically belongs to HerokuApp.com, and this is the current server that we have been building up so far. So users is going to list out a bunch of users that we have created through the form.html URL, and instead of here we can say A and B for first last name, submit. Go back to users and you'll see that AB is showing up at the very last element of the list. And so before we can begin with the deployment process of our application server, you want to head on over to Heroku's sign up page to sign up for a free account using this form over here. So once you get that done, we are going to head on over to how we can deploy a Node.js server onto Heroku right now. All right, everybody, we are now back inside of good old Visual Studio Code on the left side of the screen. And this project over here is the same project that we've been working on so far for the last couple of videos. And what I would like to do in today's lesson is to keep the Explorer minimized so that I can have some extra space to work with in the editor. Now, down below over here, I have the terminal loaded up inside of the current project. So everything looks pretty good so far. Now, today's video, I'm going to begin the deployment process of our Node.js application by first going into the Chrome browser. And let's go ahead and head on over to dashboard heroku.com/apps and log into your account. Now, currently for me, I am logged into my Justin Bieber account, which is an interesting name. My current account doesn't have any applications, so that's why we see this blank slate over here. And the thing that you want to do next is to head on over to the Getting Started page for Node.js on the Heroku platform. And this is a very long URL. You can go ahead and Google search for Heroku Node.js example, and you will arrive to this page over here. So Getting Started, Introduction. And let's go ahead and begin the installation process of some tools for Heroku. All right, so first thing to do is click on that button and head on over to the setup page. Now, this is a particularly long guide, so I'm going to go ahead and skip over some of the stuff that's not necessary for our application we have. And so let's begin by setting up Heroku CLI, which is the command line interface tools. So click on this drop down, click on Mac OS X or whatever OS you are on, download this thing. And down below, you'll have this package installer to install, and just install this guy. Because I already have the package installed, I'm not going to go through that process and waste your time. And what we can do now is to head on over to the terminal, and you can say Heroku, and you'll get a bunch of these Heroku commands that you can run. Now, you might have to restart your terminal in Visual Studio Code for this to work, so make sure you do that. And then go ahead and type Heroku Login, kind of what this guy is telling us to do over here. So enter your Heroku credentials. And again, because I'm logged in as Justin Bieber over here, I'm going to use that account. So email is whatever your email is. So let me just log into my account over here, and hopefully I can type in my password correctly. And everything looks good. Well, I think I typed in my password incorrectly, so let's type this guy in again. And let's see that, and hit the enter. And I'm now logged into my account. So everything looks good. You can say Heroku and apps like that. And again, because I don't have any apps, it tells me that I have no apps. So everything seems to match up correctly. Let's now head on back over to the Getting Started page. And let's see, what is the next thing I need to do? Well, if you scroll down a little bit, make sure you have some of these tools installed. We have Node, we have NPM, and we have Git. So I believe we already have this stuff up here set up. So make sure you have Git installed as well. And now we can go on and head over to the Prepare for Application step. Now, because we already have an application, we don't need to prepare a brand new app. So we can skip this and just move on to deploying an application right now. So this might be a little bit confusing, but all you gotta do is to just run this Heroku create command. So let me just type that in over here, Heroku create, and just wait for it to help you create an application. And right over here, it says that I have this new app called Com Savannah for 9958. If you go on to dashboard of Heroku.com, you'll see this brand new application over here. You can click into it and inspect whatever is inside. But the main thing that you have to know about it is that it is totally free to play around with. All right. And you can also delete your applications all the way over here if you want to. But anyhow, let's go back to the Getting Started guide and see what we have to do in order to deploy our application onto this new app called Com Savannah. It's going to look different for you because Heroku decides to create different names for all of your users whenever you create an app. Okay, so having said that, let's try to push our code onto Heroku master somehow. So over here inside of the terminal of VS Code, you can do something like Git Status. And so if you're not familiar with Git and how it works, I'll just go through these steps just one by one. So Git Status will tell you what is inside of your Git repository. You might have to say Git init to initialize your current directory, but I already have it initialized, so I can just say Git Status. And currently, I don't have any changes with my project. It's going to look a little bit different for you. So for example, if I enter a new space right here, hit the save and say Git Status again, it tells me that I have this new file over here, app.js, this new modification. So for you, you probably want to say git add and dot to add everything onto your Git repository. And so you'll have a lot of other different files over here, but what you really need to do is to commit all of these files, and I'm just going to give it a sentence for what this commit is going to be called. So let's say, push to Heroku master, and just close it off with a quote. And you can say Git Status one more time. You'll see that you have this one commit that you can push to Heroku master. So I'm going to copy that and paste that in there, and everything should work, hopefully. So once you run that command, it'll push all of your code onto Heroku, and this process takes a little bit of time. Basically, it pushes some code and installs all of your NodeJS dependencies, and once it's done, you can visit this URL over here. So it was deployed to Heroku. Let me click on that, and hopefully that launches. Well, that doesn't seem to work, so let's say Heroku and open, and hopefully that will give me this web page over here. So this is where all of my code was deployed to, but as you can see, we have an application error that we have to fix. So let me see if I want to show you how to fix that by going back to the Getting Started guide. And so we executed Heroku open to launch our app into the browser, and we can view the logs for our app using this command over here. So let's go back into the terminal, paste that in, Heroku Logs tail, and it will tell you that we have an error code of H10. Our application actually crashed. So the next thing you have to do is to define this thing called a proc file that tells your Heroku app what application to load. So we have node and index.js. So let me show you how to insert this file inside of our project. So go inside of your Explorer, create a new file, call it Proc File. I believe that's what it's called. So Proc File, hit the enter, And inside of here, you want to say web and node. And instead of index, we have app.js as our application. So make sure to make that change, hit the save. And now we can minimize the Explorer and head back into the terminal. So I'm going to hit Control-C to exit out of the logger. And you can say Git Status one more time. We have the Proc File over here. So you can say Git add this Proc File, Git Status. That will appear as a new file that we need to commit. So we will run git commit -m, new proc file for Heroku, and that with a message like that. And now I believe we can execute the push one more time. So what does this guy tell us to do? Well, this doesn't look all that important, so I'm going to skip some of this stuff and run app locally, push local changes. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do inside of the terminal over here. I'm going to say git push Heroku master one more time, and that's going to push this new commit change of the proc file onto our server. So it's going to run through the entire installation process one more time, and it's going to finish in just a moment. And there we go, just finished over there. So if you refresh this page now, you will see that it actually doesn't end this request. So in order to figure out what's going on, you want to say Heroku Logs and tail it again, and it'll give you your logs right over here. Okay, so as you can kind of see, it says that our build started with this account, and then we deployed it, build succeeded, state changed from crashed to started because it crashed earlier, and now the server is up and listening on 3003. So what that means is our application is actually up and running. So this statement right here, server is up, is actually being logged from our code on line 27. So server is up and listening on 3003. Now, one final fix that you have to kind of implement here to make sure your application actually works is to modify this port number of 3003. So the application finally stopped, the application crashed. So the final thing you have to do is to go back to either the started guide and just modify your code by introducing a port over here. So I'm going to define a variable called port, and it's going to come from the environment variables of your computer or your Heroku instance. So over here, I'm going to modify this to 3003, and I'm going to use port instead of this hard-coded value. So port, and maybe fix that comment as well. And inside of here, let me just say listening on, and we'll end this with the plus of port like that. Okay, so with that small little change, let me kill off the logs again, and let's clear this out. So git status, we have that one app.js change. We'll say git add app.js for that one single file. Git status one more time. Git commit, and for this commit change, we fix the port for Heroku, and we'll say git push Heroku master one more time. It's going to push that new change we just introduced. It's going to redeploy our server with that new code, and right now it's going to use the port that Heroku tells us to use instead. So that's this process m port variable is actually what Heroku tells us our port needs to be. So once you have that change, you can perhaps say, let's see, down in the terminal, Heroku, and open. It'll launch this inside of the browser, and you'll see that your application is now up and running. So if you refresh this, you'll see the same page. Let's close out of that, and it tells you that at your root of your application, it says hello from root, and that is being logged down over here. So line 22, hello from root. And so pretty much our application is up and running, and everything is working on this website over here. Okay, so now with our application server up and running on the Heroku Cloud platform, and everything looks pretty good up to this point, I want to move on to showing you a problem with our server. And that problem shows up if you visit the user's route like so. And once you do that, you run into this thing called an internal server error. So let me show you why this problem is occurring by going into the Heroku Logs with that command. And down at the very bottom, we are failing to query for users with a connection refused at this localhost 127.0.0.1. And let me show you exactly what that problem is by going into the routes user.js file. Let me just minimize the Explorer. And let's go into the user's route over here. And so you see that error message being logged on line 17. And the problem right now is that when we're trying to get a connection to our MySQL server, which is this call, get connection, which is down here, we are returning the pool, which is above. And basically this guy is trying to connect using the host of localhost, which is 127.0.0.1, using the user root and this database over here. Now, this guy only makes sense when we are connecting locally to our current database on our computer. And this guy doesn't really exist on the cloud platform for our Heroku application. All right, so this right here doesn't make sense anymore. And the way we want to fix this problem is to actually add a MySQL instance to our application somehow. So inside of my Heroku application, this column Savannah guy, I want to actually add MySQL to it somehow. So let me show you how to do this by opening up a new tab and just type in MySQL add-on and Heroku. And this will bring you to one of these pages. I'm just going to use this ClearDB MySQL add-on. So just click on this guy. And what is ClearDB? You're probably wondering. Well, ClearDB is basically a high-speed database for your MySQL-powered applications, and that's basically what we have right now. And it's great for developers. You can read up on all the documentation here. And the great thing about this is that it is free to use if you just want to play around with it. And so if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see the plans and pricing, and we're going to use this Ignite free version. And the way you actually install it is you want to run this command inside of the terminal. So we're going to add on the ClearDB Ignite version. And so let's go ahead and head back into the terminal over here. Let's clear it out. And I'm just going to paste that command in and just hit enter like so. Now it's going to create the ClearDB instance for my Calm Savannah app, which is this guy over here. And so I believe if I refresh, you'll see the add-on somewhere showing up. And let's see, we have that ClearDB MySQL add-on right there. Now, if you run this command on your terminal, you're probably going to run into the error of not having your billing information set up correctly. So just head on over to account settings right here and go to billing and fill out the credit card and you should be fine. So once you do that, you can install your ClearDB instance. And what that does is if you type in Heroku and you say config, it'll list out some configuration parameters for your Calm Savannah or for your Heroku app. And one of the parameters that you need is the ClearDB database URL, and it gives you the user information as well as the password for your ClearDB MySQL instance. All right, so what exactly do you do with this information? Well, what you got to do is you can, log into this instance using SQL Pro over here. So I'm going to try to log into it using this information. And it's a little bit hard to read, so let me walk you through this one step at a time. And what you got to do is go ahead and use this as the user. So I'm going to modify this guy up above. And instead of using the user of root, we're going to use that. And you also have to provide a password because ClearDB is kind of securely protected on the Heroku platform. And the password is this guy over here right after the colon. So it's user password. So just paste that in over here and everything should be good to go. All right. So the next thing you need is the actual host, which is the next thing inside of this long value. So copy it from the @ all the way up to the .NET. So I'm going to copy and paste that in there. So that's the host. And finally, this is the database that you want to actually connect to. So Heroku all the way up to the question mark, and just paste that in there. And you can hit the save, and you want to push this change onto your application. But before I do that, I'm going to log into this guy. So let's see, hopefully you guys can see SQL Pro over here. I'm going to copy some of this information. So for the database, let's just use that. This guy will be the actual host. So copy that, paste that in there. Finally, for the user, just double click there. And for the password, we will click on that. So this information is going to obviously look different for your ClearDB MySQL instance. So make sure you copy in the appropriate information. So once you have that, you can test the connection, and you'll see that the connection succeeded. You can connect directly to ClearDB, and you will walk straight into the actual instance in just a moment. I think I might have frozen SQL Pro, so I might have to restart this guy. Nope, there it is. So once you kind of connect to it, you see that you are connected to that Heroku database over here that matches that. And the one thing that we have to do is to actually create our users table inside of this database. So make sure you do this by hitting that plus button and just type in users for your table name. Have this guy ready. I'm going to add in those two columns that I had in my local database. So I believe I had first underscore name. And this guy, I'm just going to give it a varchar for some kind of string. And the string can be 30 characters, and I'll just uncheck the null. The other column that I had was the last name. So hopefully I can spell this correctly. Last name, varchar, and you can give it whatever length you want. I'm just going to uncheck the allow null. And now my Heroku database on ClearDB has this users table. Okay, so I'm going to move this out of the way. And now I'm going to save this change inside of the users file. And I can say git status one more time. It's going to say that my users file has been modified. So why don't we just say git add, and I'll just add everything. Git status, we can commit this change out. So let's say git commit -m, and we'll say use ClearDB, so ClearDB, and we'll just commit that, and I'll say git push Heroku and master. So this guy is going to push that final change onto our Calm Savannah application, and once you do that, you'll be able to access the user's route over here, hopefully. So now our application is up. I'm going to refresh this page. You will see that the user's route will take a little bit of time to return, but now it's returning you a blank array. And the reason why that's happening is because we don't have any users inside of our ClearDB instance yet. So why don't we access the form.html over here and create a brand new user. So why don't I just create myself with Brian Boone, hit enter or hit the submit button, whatever you want, and let's create another user. And so let's refresh this page, and maybe let's say Michael Jordan, and hit the submit, and then we will go back to the users route, so users, and we'll see our two users that we just created. And this is how you connect a Heroku application to a MySQL database so that you can persist data and then make your REST API a lot more robust. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to deploy a Node.js application onto the cloud using the Heroku Cloud platform. And now that you have your own custom backend in the cloud, you can access it with a browser as well as your typical mobile application. So the options for you is now endless. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. The code for today's project should be available in the description below. Now, if there are any other features that you would like to see inside of this series, make sure to let me know down in the comments below, or follow me at Twitter or Instagram at BuildThatApp. That's gonna be it for today. I will see you in the very next video. Bye bye, guys.